everybody. Welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and I have just returned from TCO Performance Center, where I watched another Minnesota Vikings practice. I believe we're at, is this number 9 today? Number 8? Something like that. Maybe number 9. And whichever number it is, I would say this, one of the most memorable and impressive so far from, which quarterback am I going to say? Well, if you've already seen the headline, you might know actually both Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy had very, very good days at the office today. So we'll talk about that. An injury on the defensive side. Will Reichard kick 6 field goals? I'll let you know how that goes for him, or went today for him. And we'll take your questions and comments as well and break this all down. Tomorrow is a walkthrough for the Vikings, so we won't be out there. And then Monday is one of the big moments of every year's training camp. Monday night is, yes, that's right, the night practice that we have all treated like kind of a scrimmage. It, under Kevin O'Connell, hasn't quite been as epic as it was under Mike Zimmer, or as much as it meant to Mike Zimmer in the past, but it's always one of those markers of training camp where you get to that night practice. Let's see who they're playing in front of the fans. And then it's a precursor to what's going to happen in the preseason game. And then we go on and on and on and go forward with the offseason. And then at some point, we will get an answer to who is going to be the starting quarterback. But we won't get that at least exactly soon. So why don't we start by talking about Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy's day. I know that's what everybody wants to hear about. I've even got my notes out here because there were a number of impressive plays that I wanted to talk about with both quarterbacks. I think the place to start with Sam Darnold, who still QB1. As far as I could tell, no reps for J.J. McCarthy against or with the ones today. He was going against both the ones and the twos, a mix of both. But he had his first and only rep the other day with the ones, almost threw an interception. Didn't have any today. We'll have to work his way back up to that, I guess. So we'll start with the guy who is QB1 presently, which is Sam Darnold. I thought today Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson were extremely on point. If you are the person who all offseason has been telling your friends, look, Sam Darnold has never played with a receiver like Justin Jefferson, okay? This is why Sam Darnold is going to be good, because that guy, he's never had this guy. He's had Jamison Crowder. He's had Robbie Anderson. He's even had DJ Moore, but he is no Justin Jefferson. Well, today was a good day, and that was a good practice. If you've been that guy who has been telling all of your friends and family that Darnold just needs to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson, they started out early in practice with hitting a sideline throw where Jefferson was running out-breaking route. Darnold let it go, layered the ball over to the sideline, and Jefferson went up and grabbed it in a fashion that very, very few NFL wide receivers can. But it was a good throw. At the same time, it was in the place that it needed to be versus the coverage, and Justin Jefferson just goes up and gets it as he does. Another thing that I have noticed on is them clicking on throws over the middle over the last couple of practices, and they've probably hit 6, 7, 8 throws over just the last 2 practices where Sam Darnold was accurate, where he was on time, and no surprise, Justin Jefferson was able to make plays. And that wasn't really getting going earlier in training camp and in the first padded practice. We're still kind of early, but the first padded practice, there were some moments where they kind of went, wait, how is that supposed to work? That's what training camp is for, by the way. But now that they have gotten on the same page a little bit, it's been completion after completion from Sam Darnold to Justin Jefferson. In my notes, I have Darnold to Justin Jefferson again. Darnold to Justin Jefferson in the red zone over and over with these two connecting over the last 2 days. And that would, if you're trying to keep the meter of where things stand between Darnold and J.J. McCarthy, that would definitely push you toward Darnold a little bit more as far as starting early in the season, that he's had so many reps with Justin Jefferson. To date, J.J. McCarthy has had 1. And Sam Darnold has had now dozens, and they are starting to connect in a way that they weren't before. That's that is a big part of this offseason. If Darnold is going to start, which I think a lot of us believe still that he will be the quarterback when they face the New York Giants, it's a huge part of it. If Sam Darnold is going to change the narrative about him, if he's going to come in and show that he could be a starting quarterback, Justin Jefferson has to be an enormous part of that. And their chemistry over these last few practices has come alive. And then at that point, you can see the arm talent that we've talked about with Sam Darnold when we've seen him in shorts or when we've seen him in mini camp. But those throws that you're just whipping the ball deep down the field, well, you're not always going to see a ton of those. And Darnold said it was something that he wanted to put an emphasis on, is completing deep balls. But deep balls are maybe 10 to 12% of the throws in the NFL, whereas intermediate throws make up such a higher percentage. And if you look at Jefferson's career, that's where he has annihilated the competition. I mean, everywhere, but intermediate throws between 10 and 20 yards, he has been prolific. And that's where he and Darnold are starting to come together. And when you see it in the middle of the field on time, click correctly, or when you see him make a really spectacular throw along the sideline, 15, 20 yards down the field, to Jefferson go get it, you could definitely envision what that would look like in actual games from Darnold to Jefferson. So that chemistry is coming along. I think that's a big advancement in the Vikings offense that's happening. If it wasn't, and if they were struggling, you should never in your life struggle to get the ball to Justin Jefferson. Then we might start saying, okay, what's going on here? But now it is starting to click, and that is starting to happen. On the other side of things, with the twos, J.J. McCarthy had a really excellent day, and I want to talk about a couple of throws that stood out. He had a red zone drill where he found Trent Sherfield for a touchdown, and he and Trent Sherfield have connected a handful of times. They did a really interesting drill where the offense was pushed back, like up against their own goal line, and they had to fight their way out of it, essentially. And J.J. McCarthy was able to find Nick Muse, who I thought had a really good day, and we'll talk about the tight end situation with the injuries, but he was able to find Nick Muse on a deep throw down the field that was accurate. And I think that his accuracy in throwing the ball down the field has looked pretty good. Going into this, that was one of the criticisms of J.J. McCarthy, and watching him in minicamp, they needed to put a little more arc on the ball, a little more touch. And I think it's looked okay. I mean, it hasn't been the same level as Sam Darnold for the deep passing because Darnold's been doing this a lot longer. But overall accuracy, I've mentioned this a few times throughout, that it is taken a significant jump from where it was during minicamp. And I think a major part of that is just knowing where he's supposed to throw, how the footwork is supposed to work, the reps and the hours that he's put into it. And we've seen progress. And today, by the way, just the overall being that it was an excellent day for J.J. McCarthy, today was huge for him to bounce back from yesterday. Yesterday was a pretty miserable practice for J.J. McCarthy, and those are going to happen. We talked about that last night about, look, I mean, when it's a rookie, you're going to have these ups and downs, but then to come back out today and have a bunch of good plays, this deep ball to Muse in that drill was really good. And then in that same period, they also ran a cover zero blitz, and he was able to beat the blitz and find his man for a completion. I didn't write down who he threw it to, but he was able to beat the blitz, throw it down the field, and get a completion, which was very impressive for J.J. McCarthy. He also had a couple of reps where he had a good throw to Jalen Naylor that resulted in a big gain. And then he also has been doing some playmaking, some stuff where, all right, now he's going to scramble, and now he's going to roll on the move. And there was one completion that he had where he escaped the pocket pretty quickly. So it wasn't a sack necessarily, but he escaped the pocket pretty quickly and then threw on the run. And this was something that I wanted to see him do because in college, it was one of his biggest assets, and he threw a very accurate bullet. I mean, that doesn't mean that it was the greatest practice I've ever seen, but there were things from both quarterbacks today. Actually, it might be the best two quarterback practice I've seen because we've rarely been in a situation where the Vikings have had two quarterbacks who were drafted in the top 10. So it probably actually was from that perspective. But to have McCarthy get back from having a tough practice, succeed in some of the situational stuff they were doing, not final drives, but rather backed up in your own end zone and try to work your way out of it. Both quarterbacks had success, some ups and downs in the red zone, but a lot better from J.J. McCarthy today. The scramble, the throw on the move that had velocity on it. I mean, going into a day where they're going to have a walkthrough, that is a big-time confidence builder. And then the night practice, the fans are going to be out, and they're going to want to see J.J. McCarthy throw the ball. And for him to go into that period of time where he's not going to have another rep at it for a little while by camp standards is, I think, important for him to bounce back and to play as well as he did today and have as good of a practice as he did today, connect with some of his wide receivers, make some accurate throws, show off the talent of playmaking. This was a really good day for J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold. And every day you can be pushed pretty far one way or the other by the feeling walking out of TCO Performance Center. So after the first padded practice, you walk out going, oh man, if Sam Darnold starts, they're going to win like 4 games. And then after today, I might tell you that Sam Darnold was about to throw for 4,200 yards, 28 touchdowns, 8 picks, and go to the Pro Bowl. And that's training camp. And this is, I was just talking with my wife on the phone, telling her about how things are going on. Hopefully some of you have seen her. She's doing Olympic broadcasting for the shooting events. She is in Connecticut doing broadcasting for the Olympic Games in Paris. So if you get a chance, check that out. Some of her stuff is on YouTube. But anyway, so we've been just on the phone with each other. And I was telling her about how I've never had a training camp like this since I became an NFL reporter full-time in 2016 covering the Vikings, where every single day you're kind of riding this roller coaster. And normally just you wouldn't want to evaluate every single practice as some referendum on what each quarterback is going to be, but there's no way not to. When you walk out of there after today, you go, man, they got a 10-win quarterback and a franchise quarterback, and I don't want to hear anything else. And yesterday it was, well, Darnold is going to be a lot better, and maybe McCarthy has to sit a whole year, and you can feel so different. It's the whiplash is what I have right now at this moment. So let me try, with that said, before I move on to the other things, then we'll get to your questions and comments. Let me try to make a definitive statement now that we're going to have 36 hours or whatever it's going to be. I can't do math. I guess it's going to be 48 hours until the next time I see them practice when they have the night practice. So let me make a definitive statement for the next 48 hours on these two quarterbacks. I think the start of training camp has gone very well for the Vikings overall at the quarterback position. That Sam Darnold starting to get in rhythm with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson on a daily basis. And he actually hit Johnny Munt again. Johnny Munt has had a great training camp. I guess I didn't have that on my bingo board, but Johnny Munt, another one of those seam routes down the field where Sam Darnold was able to find him. And maybe this offense is just set up for tight ends to succeed. But getting onto the same page with these wide receivers was number one, the most important thing for Darnold. And when there were some rocky days in there, it was worth wondering, okay, is he going to be able to do it? Is Justin Jefferson going to be happy? How's this going to work out? And these last two practices have given confidence to that idea that it's there. It's starting to develop. And if it grows from here, we could be having a conversation about Sam Darnold and what he's going to do this year and his potential to have this huge step forward from where he was before, because nobody has the keys to that more than Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. And if he's getting it, if he's getting the offense and understanding how to get them the football, which he has these last few practices, then he can have success. I have no doubt about that after seeing everyone who's thrown the ball to Justin Jefferson succeed. And that mostly just means Kirk and Nick Mullins. But as far as J.J. McCarthy goes, even in his bad practice, you didn't see him get too frustrated or down. You didn't see him giving up. You didn't see him like stopping his body language from dapping up teammates and getting people in the huddle. You didn't see the dropping of the head or shoulders. You didn't see the coaches running over to him, kind of panicked, getting in his face or anything like that. There was no body language signs that you wouldn't like, even when yesterday it was a difficult practice. And then today, coming back and throwing a lot of good passes, making plays, starting to get confident in what he can do as far as scrambling and how he's approaching the defense, where he's taking the football with his reads. The timing was much better today than it was yesterday. I didn't have sacks written down. Maybe one of the scrambles would have been a sack. I think he threw a ball away, but that would be about it for JJ McCarthy. That the early returns have checked a lot of boxes from the sideline view every day, watching this thing, develop, that they've checked a lot of boxes of someone that looks like they could play in the NFL. And I was talking to another reporter today just about how, if nobody told you, I like to do this kind of test with myself. If nobody told you that JJ McCarthy was a rookie and drafted right now, and you walked out on the practice field and just for the sideline, you don't have the script, you don't have the plays, you don't have the reads, you're just watching from the side, would you think he was a rookie? And I think the answer is probably not. With the way that he leads the team, the way that he gets under center, you don't see too many times with Kevin O'Connell throwing up his hands or getting frustrated at all. You see, I can't tell you about a time that I have seen that, but you don't see him really struggling with a lot of this stuff. And the fact that the technique and his throwing is coming together, I think is all very positive signs toward the future. And they've given themselves a fallback option with Sam Darnold for him to play as long as they need him to play, or as long as they want him to play. But if you had to put JJ McCarthy into an NFL game, and I'm projecting out here, this is trying to make a strong statement, okay? So give me a little leeway. If you had to put him in an NFL game at the end of this camp, I think he'd be okay. That's how I view it right now, because I've seen bad. And I feel awful for Kellen Mond, but I've seen bad. It's not just him. The number of quarterbacks who've come through who have tried to run offenses and just struggled and failed. And even in comparison to what we saw from Jaren Hall last year as the pads came on and it got more difficult. And when you see someone that looks like an NFL starting quarterback, you wouldn't have to work hard to figure that out. And the way that he's carried himself so far, the signs I think are extremely good after today's practice. And I was very, very interested. How is he going to bounce back from yesterday? And I think he passed that test with flying colors. I don't know what Kevin O'Connell thinks about it, but everybody, I think, who watched it today from the sideline or stands view came away thinking, okay, that was a really, really nice showing. So there is your quarterback breakdown. Now, if they stink it up on Monday night, then we'll come back and say, it's over. It's over. No, we're trying not to be that way. And this is why, because if you overreact yesterday, you're going to come back today and go, well, sorry that I said he was a bust, but maybe not. And that's not what we're trying to do here. Trying to give you the whole progression and the whole viewpoint on what this thing is going to be. And this is why I'm not moving my percentage chance that he starts. But I still think that if Sam Darnold continues to play like this, not only will he start, but he will win if he plays like this, like he did today. Every day has not been like that. But overall, I would say it was an A from the quarterbacks today. They're hands down best practice between them and maybe the best day for both guys. So that was, look, fun to watch. I mean, when things are clicking in a practice and a lot of guys are catching passes, when it doesn't work, it's pretty miserable. And I feel bad for the fans who came out to see it. That was yesterday. All right, let's talk about another thing that is on the plus side. I know a few of you saw the other day that Will Reichard missed a couple of long kicks. He did not today. So you can take a deep breath. Will Reichard not only made his kicks. I should have gone back and forth with things, maybe some things that aren't going so good, because now I feel like I'm the hype machine here, but it was unbelievable. Like Will Reichard kicked the absolute heck out of the ball today. He went 6 for 6. 2 of them were over 50. Another one was deep 40s, I think 47. And so I was waiting till the end of the end zone period, the red zone period, to go get some water because I was absolutely dying. And maybe you could see, I don't know, one side of my face is this side. One side of my face is very sunburned and the other one is not. Maybe that's not coming through on the video. I don't know. Because I was standing in the same spot sweating. So I thought, you know what? When the kicker goes out there, I'm going to go get some water. And where I was walking, I could see the entire, line, like on a golf shot. If they have the shot tracer, I could see the line of the ball. I think every one of the 6 went directly through the middle of the goalpost. I mean, Will Reichard is overall having an extremely good mini camp and start to training camp, despite one day where he may have missed a couple. But today, 6 for 6, including 2 from 50 plus. Very, very impressive from Will Reichard. And this is so far something to continue to keep an eye on how well he's performing. I mean, he was one of the best kickers ever in college football. I mean, considering he's the all-time leading scorer at Alabama, he's much more experienced sometimes than kickers when they come out. One of only a handful of kickers that have ever had more than 100 attempts in college. I believe that's the stat, but a great day for him. So now let me get to something that did not go so good, which is Jerry Tillery, the defensive tackle, who had my attention. Jerry Tillery was injured today, banged up, didn't see exactly what happened. Looked like he might have got tangled up. And I'll describe to you the scene. And if you guys see any reports on Jerry Tillery, let me know, because I'll tell you what we saw. And the other night we were talking, and then it came out what had happened with Robert Tonyan. But with Jerry Tillery, he went down, and when he was down, and you don't see this too often when a player's just banged up, Kevin O'Connell and Harrison Phillips both came over to him and kneeled down and spoke to him for a little while he was down with 3 trainers around him. And then he got up and he gingerly walked over to the golf cart, and then the golf cart took him inside. I don't want to speculate on what that could be, but the way that O'Connell and Harrison Phillips came over, kneeled down, talked with him, made me think that there's a potential for a serious injury here. But again, I don't want to exactly speculate there. And if you guys, again, see an update on that, feel free to let me know. But if they were to lose Jerry Tillery for the season, for the first part of the season, for any significant amount of time, that would not be great, because this unit, this defensive tackle unit, has, in my opinion, been okay, if not pretty good. Harrison Phillips is still a really good player, and I think maybe we ended up more down on Harrison Phillips at the end of last season than he was deserved, because he just played way more snaps than he should have. Jonathan Bullard is kind of just a guy type, fits into what they want to do defensively. But then, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but you've got some younger players mixing in, and Tillery, I thought, was a nice addition in the offseason as someone who had rushed the passer in passing situations with the Raiders, and is a big guy who I thought was playing pretty well in practice. And to have him go down like that, to see that reaction, it makes you concerned that there could be a long-term injury there. So again, we'll wait and see what we've got for updates on Jerry Tillery. But if he is out, then it doesn't look as good. It looks a little less deep there. It looks like there could be, the same problem as last year when they were lacking that depth and lacking any sort of push toward the quarterback really at all. That was the issue with last year, is that they didn't have anybody who could get into the backfield no matter the situation. Wanted to bring you something from Brian Flores, because the undrafted free agents are at it again, folks. They are. There are 2 undrafted free agents that have really stood out, and Brian Flores had some nice words about Gabriel Murphy. He was one of them, and also Dwight McGlothern was the other one. So let me bring you first what Brian Flores had to say about undrafted free agent from UCLA, Gabe Murphy.
Hey, Brian, what have you liked about Gabriel Murphy's camp so far?
I think Gabe is, going back to, watching him at UCLA, did a lot of good things there, versatile, played a lot of positions, played outside as an edge player, played inside a little bit as a 3 technique. He's played off the ball during the course of his career. They had a good front, over there at UCLA, so the thing that kind of stands out is just his football IQ. He's very bright. It's very important to him. we were in a staff meeting the other day, and he said that Gabe Murphy despises bad football. So that's a good thing a good thought from a coach to say about a player. So he's done a real nice job. I'm excited to see him, moving forward and, in preseason games. But yeah, we got a long way to go, but he's off to a good start.
With Gabe Murphy, were you guys surprised at all that he ended up being an undrafted free agent? Seems like there was a lot of projections that he was going to be probably a day 3 pick somewhere.
That happens every year. For whatever reason, I know we liked him on tape. And, we're sitting there at the end, and there's an opportunity to grab him as an undrafted free agent. And, I would say to a man, we were all, highly in favor of, let's do what we got to do to get this done. And Kwesi and his staff were the same way. And we were able to get him here, and he's done a lot of good things. We're not crowning him by any. We're not crowning him, but he's done a lot of good things.
Oh, I'm crowning him. Why can't we crown him? We should crown him. No, I'm just kidding. Never crown him. Not in football. Not until they got the crown. Then you crown him. Okay, anyway. Gabriel Murphy, another guy for the second straight year who had, excuse me, sorry. Hold on, might have to have some, got Diet Coke here. That Diet Dr. Pepper tonight. Ran out. Oh, sorry about that. Back to undrafted outside linebackers. Gabriel Murphy, for the second straight year, the Vikings went out and got a guy who went undrafted for unknown reasons, in part maybe because of his body type. Ivan Pace Jr. was certainly that. And Gabriel Murphy, like me, short little arms. But that seems like a silly reason not to draft someone when they draft long snappers and punters and stuff in the 6th and 7th rounds, running backs who will never make it. I don't understand. The players who are, their dad works for the organization, the scouting department, but you wouldn't draft a guy who had tons of pressures, tons of success, extremely high PFF grades, just like Ivan Pace, same thing. The grades across the board were tremendous. And if you're talking a UDFA or a late round pick, why not take a shot on somebody who graded very well by an objective source and then put up other statistics in college like pressures and like sacks, that it's worth it over whatever else you're going to draft at the end. But for whatever reason, the NFL did not. And Gabriel Murphy has already put himself on the map, along with also Dwight McGlothern, who is another guy that Brian Flores talked quite a bit about as well. Somebody who is big and moves pretty well and is getting a lot of reps with the second team, and looks like if you were making a depth chart right now, might beat out some other more well-known players like Andrew Booth Jr., maybe even beating out, actually probably at this point, Duke Shelley as well. McGlothern's had a really nice start to training camp. And so I asked Brian Flores, what the heck is up with this? This is a couple years in a row now where you guys have brought in some very good undrafted free agents. It used to be that we barely had to ever pay attention to the undrafted free agents. And when I would get questions, hey, what's up with this, this guy from Navy or whatever, some random, I don't know, whatever. He's not going to make the team. And every so often an Anthony Harris would squeak through, or a Adam Thielen, of course. But aside from that, there weren't too many examples of the undrafted free agents making it. We might have 2 more this year alone on the defensive side with Flores. So I asked him about it, and here's what he said.
Right, when it comes to the undrafted free agents, getting Ivan last year and then finding guys who are contributing right away, what is the process like of identifying those guys around draft season that you might have a chance to get that might be aren't drafted and can potentially contribute?
I think when, for us as a staff, when we're looking at players who may go late or undrafted, it's about fit. This league's about fit, time, and timing. You get into the right place with the right coach, the right system that fits your skill set. It allows, an individual player to, see his potential. And sometimes, you don't get in the right place. you're in a system that doesn't fit your specific skills, and it takes a little longer to reach that potential. So I think we're looking for, in that process, along with, Kwesi and Griggs and Demetrius, Chiz, and their staff, Money. And I think we're all on the same page as far as the fit. I think he's going to come here, and this is where he'd fit. This is how he'd play. And, you never really know till they get there, but we always say our job is to predict and forecast, and when you put your scouting hat on, that's what it is to predict.
So there you go. Brian Flores there talking about the undrafted free agents, and they haven't played a preseason game yet, so we can't say for sure. The early returns seem to be good from Gabriel Murphy and Dwight McGlothern, and one thing I've always said is that we can judge it on reps better than we can judge it with our eyeballs on technique or pressures or things like that. And with both guys, they're getting a lot of reps, along with I've seen Owen Porter out there quite a bit as well. And here we are with another class of UDFAs that we're actually going to have to watch pretty closely as we go forward. At the tight end position, Robert Tonyan remained out today. Also saw N'Keal Harry leaving the field early in practice, not sure of the nature of his injury, but didn't return. Nick Muse and Trey Knox. Trey Knox is a converted wide receiver from South Carolina. He converted to tight end later in his career at South Carolina, but a good athlete, good hands, caught a lot of passes today. Honestly, he must have had 5-6 catches on the day. Was kind of an outlet option, seemed to know where he was supposed to be on the route running. And Nick Muse was really impressive last year and made quite a few plays today, including on one deep ball. I believe it was from J.J. McCarthy that he caught it. So this is another guy who, I don't know what this team does to have so many good tight ends, but all of them can play. Josh Oliver had missed a couple days of 11 on 11s, but was back out there today, made some catches himself. They're building an offense for TJ Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson. So I guess it shouldn't be surprising that a lot of the plays go to the tight end. But when everybody is thriving, I don't know. I think the system may be to blame, but we'll see what happens with N'Keal Harry. Thus far, I have not been able to see enough to give you an opinion on how it's going for N'Keal Harry. We're starting to now see the guys that aren't getting reps, and that's pretty telling. And he hasn't been out there a lot at the tight end position before today. And finally, my final note, probably the longest section of notes that I have given coming back from training camp, but a lot going on today. Levi Drake Rodriguez still getting reps with the first team. Jonathan Bullard was back, so it wasn't just the fill-in situation. And Brandon Powell still taking a lot of reps with the ones. Jalen Naylor mixed between ones and twos. That battle ongoing, or maybe that battle is done and those guys are wide receiver 3 and 4, and the real battle is for everything else. I think that actually might be the case. I'm just trying to figure out how involved Naylor will really be, how involved Brandon Powell will really be. But I think you feel better now about the standing of the wide receiver 3 position than you would have going into this because of how well Jalen Naylor has played. So let me tell you about one of our most important sponsors of the show, and then I will get to all of your questions and comments. So if you haven't fired one in there yet, and I'll scroll back to the beginning and we'll go from there as I always do. But got to tell you about US Cellular. US Cellular noticed that the way we use our phones has gotten ironic. We try to put our phones down for dinner, but the menu is on a QR code, which is ironic. We hit like on social media posts that we don't actually like. Ironic, which is why US Cellular created Us Mode to help us reconnect with each other and use our phones less ironically. A phone company wanting people to use their phones less is ironic. Let's find us again with Us Mode from US Cellular. Visit uscellular.com/built-for-us to get started. All right, let me scroll. Is there any relation between Trey and Dawson Knox? No. I'm going to guess not. I'm just going to guess not on that. Definitely not. Let's start all the way back here with JP from the beginning of the show. The injury bug continues, but I guess it happens to the other 31 teams too. What is great to see is that both Sam and JJ playing well, specifically Sam, because After all, he's the one that will probably start in New York. As of right now, you would give Sam Darnold by far the nod of starting in New York because he's taken all the reps with Justin Jefferson. Even in mini camp, we asked J.J. McCarthy, hey, have you gotten a chance to throw to Justin Jefferson? And he said, no, not really, not yet. 1 or 2 passes. And if you're spending this much time into training camp and haven't had McCarthy throw a single pass toward Justin Jefferson, pretty hard to be convinced that that means that J.J. McCarthy is going to sweep in, win the job, get all the reps with the superstar wide receiver that the whole offense is built for, and then off we go. That's just doesn't seem realistic past a certain point. Once they've gotten to a preseason game, we're almost there. I've always put the marker at the joint practices, which I will be there in Cleveland. The hotel and the flight are booked, so I'm excited about that. But I might even put it a little bit earlier going into those joint practices. If they're preparing for those joint practices and McCarthy still hasn't thrown a single pass to Justin Jefferson, he's not winning the job. Because at that point, you've installed the entire offense and still haven't had your young quarterback throw to your superstar receiver. But what I feel like I keep having to go back to is that this is not abnormal, that this is something that has happened, in the way that they laid it out for us. I mean, they've said that J.J. McCarthy was going to, have every opportunity to develop. And it wasn't until he was completely ready to go, fully all set and good to go, that they would actually have him play. And that's what they are doing. They are developing him the way that they said they were going to. He's getting his second team reps. He is succeeding more than he's failing. And even when he's failing, he's bouncing back. And we can all go forward with that if it ends up being that they wanted Sam Darnold to start all along and we're never going to start J.J. McCarthy. That's all good. Like, that's an okay way to approach this, even if everyone wants to see the rookie quarterback first. And even if there's like an effort from some people, it seems, on social media to tweet out every good throw from the stands video and say, see, the media's lying to you, McCarthy's ready. Like, no one's lying to you. O'Connell's not, we're not. It's just that this is their plan and they appear to be sticking with their plan. But overall, I think it's been a good job by J.J. McCarthy. It's just, this was the way that they were always going to approach it. And the more days that go by where he's not throwing with the first team, and especially when Darnold and Jefferson keep hooking up play after play after play, that's going to keep J.J. McCarthy on the bench. But it also, or as QB2, but it also is good for him too, because he doesn't have some sort of pressure of Sam Darnold looks terrible and now McCarthy's got to get in there or whatever. That sort of narrative doesn't have to show up if they continue to go through training camp and have success together. But these last 2 days have been really excellent between Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson. Leon says, why are we not hearing much about Dallas Turner? Everything going well for Dallas Turner. The coaches have praised the heck out of him as far as his football intelligence, how well he picked up the defense. He is taking a ton of first-team reps in a rotation with Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard. The reason why is because it's gone about how you'd expect. Like, he's with the first team out there. He's doing battle with Christian Darrisaw a lot. He's losing to Christian Darrisaw a lot, but seems to have the physical gifts that we talked about. Unless we'll see if he's playing, but if he's playing in the preseason game and makes some plays, then we're going to talk about him more. Dallas Turner, because they drafted a quarterback, is the least talked about first round pick in the league. It's probably by far in the national media and even in the local media, because we've met him, we've talked to him, we've asked the coaches about him, but it's sort of, we're not really breaking down every rep because all eyes are on the quarterback, and he's looked pretty good so far, but also doesn't have to carry some huge load because they have Grenard, who's been fantastic, by the way. Jonathan Grenard is having a phenomenal training camp. I'm seeing him out there on almost every play, making different types of moves. He seems to have a deep toolbox. I've been impressed with him. Van Ginkel, Patrick Jones is having a decent camp so far. It's going so much smoothly with no real controversy or anything to talk about. And there's a quarterback situation, so there's not a debate every day of what Dallas Turner is going to do for this defense. That's pretty much really why you haven't heard as much about him. Evan says, my biggest question today isn't about the quarterbacks, about how Dwight McGlothern would get the nickname Nudie. Well, we were talking about that as well. Brian Flores mentioned McGlothern and said that his nickname was Nudie. And, I don't really know what to make of that. I've got a few guesses, but it sounded like something that they couldn't really say in front of all the cameras. So there you go. Austin says, what is most impressive about Will Reichard? Well, the kicks, when they come off his leg, woo, they go in. I don't know anything about kicking. Do you? Does anybody know anything about kicking? I don't know. I don't think so. So that's it. That's my whole analysis. The way that the ball consistently goes through the middle of, I'm going to try here. The way that it consistently goes through the middle when he's practicing stands out, but also the height and the arc. It's like watching Rory McIlroy hit off a driver. Sorry, I'm not a huge golf watcher. I like playing, but if you ask me to name three more, I might struggle. But it's not like watching Rory hit a drive, or it is like watching Rory hit a drive, where you want the combination of height and distance and velocity, and he's just got it all. I mean, the kid has a great history in college, and then he has been excellent so far in training camp outside of, two kicks that he missed the other day, and then that's about it. Oh gosh says we've seen a decent. We've also seen decent. Is he in the vein of Teddy? Oh, I see what you mean. You've also seen like decent quarterbacks. Is he in the vein of Teddy or so, a game manager in year one? I'm not sure if he's going to even play in year one, so I guess we'll see about that. I don't think that JJ McCarthy is so much that in his mindset. I think he's very much a playmaker in his mindset, although Teddy Bridgewater was too, but Teddy, it's different coaching. So this was always a frustrating thing for me. I thought, and I'm sure we'll get the comments, so I'm just going to ignore them after you say it. I thought Teddy Bridgewater in 2014 and 2015 was great. I thought he did exactly what he was asked to do. They were, in 2015 especially, a very much run-first offense behind the best running back in the NFL, and they had one of the best defenses. His job was to make sure he's not turning the ball over, make a few key throws a game, and when they did rely on him, he often came through and got them to the playoffs, won the division. I mean, you couldn't have asked for much more, but he was coached to play a certain way, and they also didn't have much for weapons in 2015. He didn't have Diggs, Thielen as they became. JJ McCarthy will play as coached if and when he plays. Like if it's this year or if it's into the future, he's going to play as he was coached to play, which is, in Kevin O'Connell's system, going to be, can you throw the ball to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison? No matter what running back they get back there, it's not going to be like a matter of O'Connell trying to protect him. That's not how O'Connell thinks. O'Connell thinks like, if you are in, that means you can run the entire offense. And if I don't think you can, then you're not playing. And that means all the dropbacks, all the rhythm, all the timing, all the complicated reads and everything else, you better have it locked down. With Teddy, that was different. That was, we're going to make sure the quarterback doesn't hurt us, and he's got to make a play when he's got to make a play. He had very good numbers on third downs and things like that when they were relying on him. The irony of this is that Teddy Bridgewater played like Jim Harbaugh asked JJ McCarthy to play, But O'Connell is not going to ask J.J. McCarthy to be a game manager. Not at all. I don't think, which is why they're more patient. That is my assessment of the whole game manager thing. But he's a playmaker. I mean, this guy has won everywhere. He's scrambled a lot in college. He made plays out of the pocket. And when I watched J.J. McCarthy's season back, when they drafted him and in the lead up to the draft, actually what I saw was him trying too hard to make plays at times and taking a sack, running away from somebody, or pushing it a little bit into a window. That's what I saw from J.J. McCarthy, not a game manager mentality. He may become that, but I don't think that's in O'Connell's nature to have that. If Josh Dobbs wasn't going to be a game manager, then nobody was. From X, it's been so long since we've had a young quarterback with any promise, so any semblance of a quality signal caller is huge for this team. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that it is an actual decade since the last young quarterback showed any potential for the Minnesota Vikings, and that would be indeed Teddy Bridgewater. And then between Bridgewater and the last young quarterback that showed potential, because we'll skip over the one guy, was Dante Culpepper. So this fan base has not had many of these young quarterbacks coming in training camps where everybody's talking about, well, he looks like this and he looks like this and what's going on. But as far as promise goes, all I can tell you from my eyeballs is what he looks like as an NFL quarterback in a practice. I can't tell you, and think about how small the differences are between the 5th best quarterback and the 12th best quarterback. We went through this many times with Kirk, first tier, second tier, third tier. Can I tell you from watching a handful of practices where J.J. McCarthy could potentially fall on that list? No, nobody can. If they claim that they can, they are lying to you. I promise they are absolutely lying to you if they could tell you from watching these practices where J.J. McCarthy is going to fall. But what I can tell you is the things that are required to play NFL games successfully. We've seen a lot of those from J.J. McCarthy. And that starts with his leadership and how he carries himself. It starts with how he receives the call in his headset, how he gets to the line of scrimmage. I'm not seeing McCarthy looking around confused very often. Even after a play that doesn't go right, you don't see him going like, I don't know where to go. You don't see that command and the physical skill. And I was talking with Nate Tice. I'm sure you guys remember him from The Athletic, but he's with Yahoo Sports now. And he was here at practice, his dad, Mike Tice, of course. And we were just talking about how it's so funny how some guys on TV in college don't look as big as they are in person, or the other way around. And J.J. McCarthy fits the size profile, bigger than you would have thought based on what you saw on TV. And so at this moment, all the signs of J.J. McCarthy, I think, even despite a bad practice yesterday, have been pretty good. And where it goes from here, we're going to find out. But does he look like someone who could play in the NFL? To me, yes, he does. And that is a big step. It's a big step because a lot of times you can figure it out pretty quickly if he doesn't. It's just where do we go from here to get him to not just be okay, but also good. Shooter McGavin says, if the Vikings start 1-4, does the job go to McCarthy if he's ready to go? But I think so. I think that if they got off to a really tough start and they went to London and they lost to the Jets, then they would probably come back with J.J. McCarthy against the Detroit Lions. Because, and I'm only saying this because this is not some sort of guarantee or knowledge or inside whatever. O'Connell's not telling anyone, just how they weren't telling anyone which quarterback they wanted the most. They're not telling anyone what their plan is. They won't even tell us who's starting the preseason, how many guys are going to get reps in the preseason game, because you need to protect that information, I guess, if you're the coach. But the way that McCarthy has looked, if he continues to play this way, that's how I should put it. If he continues to have, okay, there's a down practice, but on the up practice, it looks really nice. And it looks like he's in control and he's not struggling and everything is coming along. Then if you were to start the season badly, they should feel like they're good to go to turn to him whenever they want to. That's where it's trending at the moment. That doesn't guarantee that it's going to be the case. It's just that's where it feels like it's going. Gary says, what have you seen from Blake Brandel? That one is a little bit tough because I have not been watching every rep of the left guard. It feels like, this is just my sense of it, that Blake Brandel has fit in pretty well because he hasn't taken anything but first team reps, and they have run the ball. They're not tackling them, but it looks like they've run the ball pretty successfully with their 2 running backs. They're not tackling them, but it just looks that way. That's another hard one with the left guard, though. I think I want to see it if they play him in a game. How does that look? We can go back and look at how the reps turned out. I think that the line has been good so far at pass protecting. Oftentimes it is 1s versus 2s with Darnold out there, so that might change it a little bit. But I mean, I don't know. Is it an upgrade from Dalton Risner? That's hard to say because Risner is a good pro. It definitely looks like there's more push as far as the running game from Blake Brandel than there was with Risner. But that speaks to the whole similar thing with McCarthy and what he can become. Can I tell you right now if Blake Brandel is going to allow 25 pressures or 35 pressures? No, I can't. But I can tell you that nobody else is taking a rep out there. This is their offensive line, as it seems to me, because when the pads came on, that would have been the time to start making a change. My only observation is, first, he's huge, but that the running game does look like it's getting more push than it did with Dalton Risner. Conrad says, I hope you're not too tired from going to practices. Never, Conrad. Never. I never get tired of football. Let's see. Who was the best player from the offense today? Who was the best player on defense today? Well, the best player every day is Justin Jefferson. There's no question. If you knew nothing, if they didn't wear jerseys and they just told you one of these guys is amazing, I'm not even going to tell you who, you'd figure it out in 2 seconds. So yeah, Justin Jefferson was the best player out there. He is almost every day. But the fact that Sam Darnold is having his chemistry come together with Jefferson makes it even more obvious that he's the best player out there. Best player on defense, I'm not as sure about that. Jonathan Grenard is probably the guy that I would pick because I noticed him the most. But when you have that many moving parts, that that could be hard to say. Like, did a safety have a good practice or not? Well, I mean, was he in the right spot all the time? I don't know the plays. There wasn't as much playmaking from the safeties today as there has been when. That's the funny thing about camp. If the offense has a bad day, then we go, hey, Theo Jackson, guys, am I right? And then if the offense has a great day, we go, I don't know, that defense can't cover anybody. But I guess I would go with Jonathan Grenard if I had to pick. Future retrospect, when the Vikings say F them picks, they mean we will just get all the good UDFAs. Doesn't it seem that way? It does seem that way. And what the strategy appears to be, Aya says, feels like Kwesi hits the best in the UDFA market. The strategy seems to be that they are going to pay. That's the most important thing. You can get whatever undrafted free agents you want if you give them enough money. And if you are saving money on paying draft picks that you bring in, you might have your ownership feel like, well, we have this much allotted for the draft picks normally, but we're not going to have to pay those signing bonuses. So why don't we give a little less, but actually way more than usual to an undrafted free agent who's the top guy? And when I was thinking about this strategy, now, F them picks, you need picks and you need them to hit and you need them to be good players. And your odds of undrafted free agents hitting are lower than draft picks. But when you think about it this way, if somebody was a 5th round prospect and certain teams had something, they didn't really want to do it, and they end up in the 7th, how big is the gap? Like, the gap between the top 5 picks in potential and in talent, and even number 10 to 15 is enormous. The gap between 20 and 30 may not be as big. The gap between 30 and 45 may not be as big. The gap between the 5th round prospect and the first undrafted free agent, how big is that? Is that almost nothing at that point? And if you go out and you get 5 of the best UDFAs because you're willing to pay them the most, or 3 or 4, your chances of hitting on one of those guys are just better than a 5th round draft pick. I don't think that means you can just, throw away all your draft picks, but if you have to use those draft picks to get players like Dallas Turner or make JJ McCarthy for sure your quarterback by moving up one spot, that's a way to counteract it a bit as far as your odds to hit on players. And it seems to be working. But the biggest thing I think with the UDFAs is Brian Flores. I think it's Brian Flores. This guy was a tremendous scout for the New England Patriots. And when I interviewed Scott Pioli, who used to be with the Patriots, was the GM of the Chiefs, one thing that he told me about Flores and that mentality, and it seems simple, but it really makes a lot of sense, is that they would look for the guys who had a specific thing that they did really well and then say, can we do that? And with Gabriel Murphy, there's probably certain types of pass rushes he was very successful with in college. And I think they're saying, can we do that? And it's working. I think that's really what's happening with Ivan Pace. All right, well, this guy is really good at blitzing and can cover pretty well for his size. Like, can we do that with him? And then he gets here and he's a Wolverine and they figure out, oh yeah, I guess we can. He was out there hitting dudes today like, Ivan, they're on your team. Remember that, my man. Wallpapers Live. What player are you most hyped about outside of the JJ duo, preferably offense and on defense? Well, if I were to say who has captured the hype for both sides of the ball that are not Jefferson, McCarthy, Dallas Turner, like obvious people, the answer on each side, I think, would be Jalen Naylor as far as wide receivers go, because he's had a lot of highlight reel catches. Now, again, Brandon Powell is getting a little more work with the first team today and yesterday, so that's something worth watching. But Jalen Naylor has done what they've asked him to do, which is stay healthy, make plays in training camp as he has in the past. And on the defensive side, it's Levi Drake Rodriguez, somebody they drafted in the 7th round. They were jacked about that when they picked him in the 7th round. And he has worked his way up to getting some first team reps, which for a 7th round pick, you just don't see that often. Even if it's only a handful, getting reps against the first team means we're thinking about playing you. They wouldn't do it if they weren't. And that's why it's always good, because if I was trying to evaluate from the flashes I've seen, I'm not really sure, but they go back and watch with the trained eye every single rep. They know. This is why you rarely see players who get cut by the Vikings show up somewhere else and turn out to be great, because they get a sample size and they know by the end of training camp whether a guy belongs on the first, second, third team or off the team. And to see him at least worked in with the first team, it deserved hype once you get onto those first team reps. Valerie says, how is the Air Force guy looking? That would be Bo Richter. I think Bo Richter got in early as far as taking some reps with the second team, and I've seen him less recently. Early on, maybe a lot more. He's physically very, very impressive. Looks like a very strong guy, and has some speed and quickness to him, but will need a lot of technique work. What I've seen so far, I would say someone to put on the practice squad and then develop from there because of his physical ability, but maybe not someone who's ready to play in the NFL just yet. That's my impression of him right now. He could get 4 sacks in the preseason game and everyone would be talking about him. Wallpapers Live says, are you still in the camp of sit JJ for the whole year, or tempted with what you've seen that he might be more prepared than he thought? Well, my thing has always been that with an approach like Kevin O'Connell's, very, very patient with JJ McCarthy, that sometimes the kid is ready to take the car out for a date night by himself before you think he is. I think that JJ McCarthy will probably be closer to ready when we get to the start of the season than the coaching staff feels like he is. But that's because this is a delicate situation for them. It matters a lot to what happens with their futures and everything. So they're going to be cautious. They're going to walk on eggshells a little bit with JJ McCarthy, but I'm not terrified of the idea that he would have to play, because with a quarterback like him who can get the call in and get into the huddle and who has the physical skill, the arm strength, the mobility that he does. And he's been getting rid of the ball fairly well. Took a couple sacks yesterday, but didn't do it again today. I think he could play if you needed him to play. I wouldn't be terrified of that. But if he sits the whole year, who can be mad at that? And this is a difficult place to be because you're supposed to kind of, stick, what do they say? Like plant your flag. You're supposed to plant your flag. I'm team play McCarthy right away, or I'm team let him sit the whole year. But I've wanted to be more fluid on this situation, like I believe it is, where let's see how it plays out. But I think that if you end up having Sam Darnold play well and he's winning and they're a 500 team and they're going into the final section of the season with a chance to make the playoffs, well, keep playing Darnold, try to make the playoffs, see what happens there. But if they get off to a tough start and McCarthy isn't too far over his head as far as the coaches consider, then play him. I don't think it's going to be a disaster or that he's going to totally fall apart. I just think that it's okay to be overly safe when teams like the Chiefs and the Packers have had this work for them, that it didn't hurt in any way. Like there's no way you can hurt the guy by having him go through the whole season, because that first off season is extremely, extremely important, I think, when it comes to, mastering a little bit more of the technique and improving accuracy and all those things. So if he goes through the year, doesn't play, goes into that off season and works like crazy to be the starting quarterback the next year, who's mad at that? I wouldn't be. I want to see him like you guys do. Of course, he's the first round draft pick. We spent so many hours talking about him. Of course we want to see him play. It's just for the smart thing for the franchise. It's all right if he ends up sitting. Wallpapers, any word on what they're expecting from Hawkinson as far as making a return? Kevin O'Connell talked about it being ahead of schedule. I snarked about that yesterday, that most of the time teams do say our guy's ahead of schedule. I still look at the early part of the season for him coming back, but I don't have a medical report. I see him over on the other field working. I'm sure they want to get him into some drills before the end of training camp, 3, 4, stuff like that. Aya says, Judd said that Levi Drake Rodriguez has a nonstop motor. You think we can hit gold twice, John Randall style? Well, John Randall, I mean, yeah, I understand the small school connection, but John Randall is so much more of an outlier because he wasn't drafted. I mean, you're talking about one of the all-timers for John Randall, I think. But the point with Levi Drake Rodriguez, I mean, I agree with Judd. That's what you see out there. I mean, you see that the motor is there, the quickness, but he's also big. I mean, this is also a difference between John Randall. John Randall is small. I have stood next to John Randall and been like, this is the guy, huh? This is the nastiest pass rusher, or one of them in NFL history. I mean, he's not that big. Levi Drake Rodriguez is big. He is a mammoth human being. He's definitely over 300 pounds, I think, or at least in that ballpark. And for someone to be as quick as he is at his size has got to be what has made them intrigued. Leon says, will the defense, especially the pass rush, be better this year? Compare what you're seeing last year versus this year. Well, last year, there were so many knowns last year. I knew Hunter. I knew DJ Wanham. Just kind of understood what it was going to be. Last year was very much Danielle Hunter and every blitzer who could rush at the quarterback. This year, I don't think they'll need to do it as much. I was looking at some of the stats from Josh Metellus. He led all safeties in pressures, and Harrison Smith was in the, I believe, top 5 in pressures as well. Jordan Hicks rushed the passer a ton. Ivan Pace rushed. Like, they were sending everybody that they could and getting pressures that way. Whereas now, when you have Grenard, Van Ginkel, and Turner, and then Patrick Jones in probably a better role than he was last year, in my opinion, I think that the pass rush can be more deep than it was last year when it was basically one guy. And I mean, Hunter has a ton of sacks, but, and this is no disrespect at all, he did not always win immediately, if that makes sense, where you have some pass rushers that as soon as the snap is taken, like a Myles Garrett, and they just blow by their guy and they're at the quarterback. where Danielle Hunter was a little more of a beating drum, pushing the guy back into the quarterback, which is less impactful sometimes on a play-to-play basis. Again, no disrespect. It just is sort of a style. You might see someone like Dallas Turner or even Jonathan Grenard get there a little quicker when they get their wins. That might change it a little bit, and they may just not have to blitz as much, which would be a win for them. Alexander, was this the first day where the offense took advantage of the defense, or did the defense still win? No, this was a winning day for the offense. If you had to give the crown, now I was told not to crown anybody by Brian Flores there. We're not crowning him yet. I'm just kidding. I hope Brian Flores isn't offended. But if you were to anoint someone the winner of the day, I think it would definitely be the offense, especially when J.J. McCarthy beat the cover zero blitz. And was it maybe Michael Juergens picked it up? I noticed him picking it up on the interior. They did a good job at handling the second team offensive line, handling a Flores blitz to give McCarthy time, but he also didn't panic when they put everybody up there and sent the cover. It looked like cover zero to me, where they were sending everybody. So that's that. When the quarterbacks play really well, it's a win. When they play really well like they did today. Alexander, where do you see the Vikings offense realistically in points per game, top half or bottom half? With just the players they have as far as weapons go, if it's Sam Darnold for the entire season, in the middle is where I would put them, which is a safe pick for me. I think that's where they would be, though. It would be really hard for Sam Darnold to lead a top 5 offense, even if Aaron Jones is as fantastic as he was last year. I could see them hanging around the top 10, 12-ish, but that's kind of where they were when Kirk was the quarterback. Maybe 8th was as high as they got, or 7th when Kirk was the quarterback. So if that's the case, I expect more inconsistency for Darnold, and probably where we're really impressed by some games and really frustrated by others would be Sam Darnold's history. That would put them as a middle offense. If it's McCarthy, it's probably in the 20s. It just is rare for a rookie quarterback to lead an elite offense, and I wouldn't expect him to do that right away. So, something like good at times, not good at times, maybe 17th to 21st, something like that. Andrew, Sam Darnold has all the tools. People don't talk about his rushing and his rushing touchdowns. All that adds a layer that Cousins didn't offer. Oh, yeah, when we were talking about the plays, I was kind of running through a few plays. There was one where maybe Darnold would have been sacked. He scrambled out, though. The play kept going, so it didn't stop. So he scrambles out, and he sees Aaron Jones in the back of the end zone, and he kind of does this flip of the hips jump thing and turns and throws it like a little Mahomesian type of thing. You could see him like rolling to his left, and Aaron Jones went up and got it, and it was an athletic thing of beauty from both players. I mean, Aaron Jones, we know, is a great player, but Sam Darnold in that scramble drill was, whoa, that is an athlete. And you are right that Darnold, when I watched him at the end of the end of 2022 with Carolina, he actually did run and scramble quite a bit. That's a good point. He is a mobile quarterback, and he is a really good athlete. As far as the tools, there is no question about the tools. It really comes down to, can he protect the football, which in training camp has been yes and no. Some interceptions early, not so much the last couple days. Kirk kind of threw a lot of interceptions in this offense too. That's something that he hasn't done so badly early on as far as make those huge mistakes. The games are different. Is he going to make the big mistakes? Because if he doesn't, and he gets on the same page with Jefferson, then he's going to put up numbers. He's going to play well. Human Reconditioning says, some of you guys have some very interesting names. I assume you mean Gabriel Murphy is slept on heavily, played with Latu, but got the majority of the double teams and still managed to get pressures. I don't get it. I really don't. I truly don't understand with Gabriel Murphy what the NFL was doing, not picking him. You look at all the numbers where you're talking about the grades, the pressures, the sacks. It's worth like a 5th round pick or something, right? I mean, same with Ivan Pace. Look at all the numbers. look at all the sacks, look at all the pressures, the coverage numbers, and nobody wanted to pick this guy. And I don't know, maybe Gabriel Murphy will be the next great find. Flores said it happens every year. Does it? Of as good of a player as Pace doesn't happen every year. Maybe there was something. I'll ask around and see if I can find out what it was that kept Gabriel Murphy off being drafted. It was so weird. Let's see. Joker Nation says, do you think Naylor is going to be wide receiver 3? Ish. I think he will be sort of wide receiver 3. And Brandon Powell will mix in as well with him. But if Naylor can offer more of a downfield presence and Powell can do some of the underneath stuff, then you have a nice combination that creates a versatile type of situation where they can use both guys how they want to. That's how I think that Naylor fits in. It will be wide receiver 3A and B. And if they both get 35 catches, but Naylor's are longer and Powell's are shorter, then you get, well, that seems like a lot. If they add up to 55 additional catches, that would be pretty good. But so far, he's looked like he's done well. Max says, you are so white, man. I know. Look at this ridiculous sunburn. Not great. And I put sunscreen on. There's nothing I can do about this when I can't find some shade. It's a Southern thing. It has nothing to do with being nude. Well, feel free to explain with that. I don't know. I was kidding around. I mean, I was just joking. Brian Flores didn't want to tell us why Dwight McGlothern was called nudie, and I was kidding. I didn't have any follow-ups on that. I did not realize that it had to do with me being white, that I didn't know that. But yeah, go. I mean, feel free to explain. That's all right. Wallpapers says there's been rumors of a possible Thielen reunion. There's not going to be no, there hasn't. No, it's not happening. There's no Thielen reunion. The Panthers aren't trading him. I don't know what these and you're not following the rules. The rules of the show are if you have a rumor, you got to tell me where you got it so I can decide whether it's worth talking about or not. This one I know to be not. Adam Thielen is going to play for the Carolina Panthers because the Carolina Panthers want their quarterback to be good. Why would they give up a receiver who can catch the ball and help a young quarterback? Right? I mean, why would they do that? They want him to play for them and they want them to win and play well. They're not a team that should just be trading away a veteran wide receiver who can help Bryce Young be better this year because he really needs to be better. And not only that, doesn't make a lick of sense for the Vikings. I'd rather see if Jalen Naylor or Lucky Jackson or I keep seeing Deshaun Jones. I'm going to keep saying it until it happens. Almost every day he's out there. Deshaun Jones makes a catch. So I'm going to keep throwing his name out there. But, him too, I'd rather see those guys. Man Juice, remember what I said about the names. How come we never talk about Kevin and Sam's relationship? How is it? It hasn't really been much of a discussion because Sam Darnold is a veteran quarterback who has come here and acted like nothing but a veteran quarterback. It's not somebody that they're trying to develop. So there isn't as much discussion about it. It's, well, you came here to learn the offense and play and let's see it. But here's what I can tell you that I heard from someone. This is not going to be the hottest thing ever, I promise. But I heard from someone with direct knowledge of Kevin O'Connell's thinking. How does that work for you? That's my attempt to become an insider, that O'Connell really believed when they signed him that he could be a very good quarterback for this team. And he wanted to put his effort into Sam Darnold, give him this situation in this offense, and give him a chance to have a longer career as a starter in the NFL. That's real. That's not just, well, we grabbed a guy and whatever, that he believed in that. And I think from that perspective, it's really good for Sam Darnold. But Darnold's not a huge talker, as maybe some of you can tell. I wouldn't be either if I started in the New York market. And he hasn't gone into it a ton of their relationship. But I mean, I think that background, and also I believe that O'Connell mentioned having a discussion with Sam Darnold about drafting a quarterback, even though the Falcons didn't with Kirk, but also, I mean, he didn't even need to, like, because everyone knew it was going to happen. I think that communication has been good. And he has been asked so much more about JJ McCarthy because he's the rookie that maybe it's worth bringing up what their communication is like. I think Sam Darnold has acted so far like the most professional quarterback that you could be. And he did last year with San Francisco, and that's how he got here. And he's done everything. He talked about going on a golf trip with JJ McCarthy. I mean, they seem like they are doing their jobs out there and have a good relationship so far. He hasn't shied away from the idea of helping JJ McCarthy and seems to understand the circumstance that he's in, which does also stem back to the head coach. Edwin Murphy is going to be a really good player for the Vikings, continuing success of UCLA defensive players for Minnesota. Certainly Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks. Were there more? Or were those the only two? But you're right about that. I just don't understand it. I'll try to find out. I didn't think about it too much until today. The way it's always worked with UDFAs is I pay attention when I have to because there's so many of them. Officially today, you have to. Once Brian Flores starts talking about him like that, once the head coach starts shouting him out, then, all right, we're going to start paying attention. Gary says, is Turner mainly going up against CD on his reps? Christian Darrisaw, he is. Darrisaw was taking a little veteran time today, but the answer is yes. Yes. He has done that a lot, and it hasn't gone that well for him, and it's going to help him in the long term because there are very few players like that. Cade says, will we see more creative ways to get Addison the ball this year? Judd mentioned that they might have a plan to use him a little more. I will get Judd on the podcast at some point in training camp. Every year in training camp, we've done at least one together of my entire time in Minnesota, going back to 1500 ESPN. So I will do that to see what is going on in the mind of Zulgad. But to answer your question, I don't think so. I think that it's the offense, that the offense is designed for three guys, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. And they are really good. And because you're talking about like more of a plan, I think they had to figure out if Addison could play last year and be good. And once they did, then it became a big part of the plan to use him. I think Kevin O'Connell, the number one thing as a coach is his leadership. All right, put that aside. But from the X's and O's, the best thing he does is figure out how to get number 1 and 2 open. Cooper Kupp in Los Angeles, where he came from as an offensive coordinator. Look at what they have done with him and Puka Nacua. Everybody knows Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are going to get the ball, and yet what happens? They still get the ball. That is just McVay. It's a Matt LaFleur finds ways to get wide receivers open. Everybody knew Devontae Adams was getting the ball. Matt LaFleur. There are some guys in this tree that are very creative, and of course, Kyle Shanahan, the same players year in and year out. Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle, they're open all the time. Everybody knows it's coming to them, but when a player is great and he's schemed well, he's going to make plays. So yes, like they will have a plan, and it will probably be creative with alignments. You might see bunch sets. You might see more motion. More motion, I think, would actually be a good thing, which also requires a lot from the quarterback, which may be one of the reasons that it's Darnold to start. But more motion. They like to line both guys up in the slot. They use a lot of those high-low concepts to get guys open. So, yeah, I mean, they're going to put a ton of effort into that. What about Bob? If you were a fly on the wall, what would you hear the Wilfs say to each other about the drafting job done by Kwesi and his scouting department in 3 drafts? I wonder if they have doubts. The reality is, with the drafting, I mean, Jordan Addison's a terrific player. And so far, J.J. McCarthy's returns have been positive. I think exactly what they hoped they were getting. Dallas Turner looks really excellent. If those two turn out to be very good, and the UDFAs, like McGlothern, like Ivan Pace, who's already a quality player, and the signings, if all of those things work, then who gives a bleep about Lewis Cine? I mean, truly, busts happen. I mean, with Rick Spielman, the guy has a 2015 draft for the ages, and the 2016 draft might be worse than 2022 for the Vikings. There wasn't a single player who did anything for them. At least Ed Ingram starts and Ty Chandler gets the ball. I mean, Mackenzie Alexander played for a year and was okay, but aside from that, this happens from time to time. It was the first impression. And this goes for just a lot of things in life, that your first impression matters the most. But Addison, off-field stuff aside, is a phenomenal rookie, 10 touchdowns. And then you have Pace as someone that they found, and the two guys who are going to be foundational players for the future on each side of the ball that they've drafted, that if they work out, then everyone's going to be happy. That's what it really comes down to. If JJ McCarthy is good, you will not care at all that they missed on a second-round corner. It will just seem laughable to even talk about with Andrew Booth Jr. That's the reality of the NFL. Everything becomes so much easier if you hit on your quarterback draft pick, then no one will care. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a first-round pick of the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you care? And then the next draft, or two drafts later, was it one or two drafts later, they hit on Trent McDuffie. They hit a bunch of guys. L'Jarius Sneed, when was he taken? Somewhere in that ballpark. I mean, they hit on a bunch of dudes to play for them. Rashee Rice, again, off the field driving issues aside, another guy who was a tremendous pick. This is kind of how it goes. Like this is just how it goes. Gary says, what's your take on why Scene is, well, because he just can't play at this level. You like to make that interesting. Sometimes busts aren't that interesting. You just can't play at this level. This level requires an unbelievable dedication to what you're doing. And when I say that, I mean, think about whatever you do for a job and then like double it is what is required to be at this level. I'm not disrespecting your work ethic. I'm just saying that it is a lifestyle to succeed in the NFL. It is study. It is school. I mean, it is going to work every day and studying like crazy in meetings and trying so deeply to understand the game because it is so complicated. It's working with each other. It's showing up on time. But then you have to go off the field. This is why it's two jobs at once. Then you have to go off the field and work your body like crazy to just be in a position to make plays in the NFL. And I think the first part of that has been an issue. But it doesn't matter what your body looks like if you can't identify route combinations, if you can't see it coming out of the offense and you're a safety, it's not going to work. It's instructive with Theo Jackson and Cam Bynum. These are two guys who are really, really dang smart and work super hard at the X's and O's. They have so much passion for it. I just have never seen that from Lewis Scene. And you just kind of shrug your shoulders. There's a lot of, you go through drafthistory.com. There's a lot of guys drafted in the first round who didn't have it work out. I just don't think it's all that deep. I think it's the kind of the prime reason that most people fail in the NFL. Flick says anything around Andre Carter II. I have not seen a ton of Andre Carter. And David says, Andre Carter dying on the vine. This is the hard part about, the NFL. They draft a guy and they say, hey man, we just want to develop him and we're going to work him and bring him along slowly. Then they get a batch of more players the next year and go, ooh, but this guy is actually really more interesting. I've seen a lot of Gabriel Murphy out there. I've seen a good amount of Owen Porter. I've seen some Andre Carter, but as far as, is he standing out to me? Is he working with the second team a ton to the point where I'm noticing his pass rushes? Not really. And the preseason games might be huge for him, and the joint practices might be big for him if he gets chances in those. But it feels kind of like, I'm not sure this worked. That's how it feels. And most UDFAs don't. But it could change. We're going to see that play out. But just from what I've seen so far, I haven't felt like, oh, this guy's in the rotation or something. It's been entirely Van Ginkel, Turner, Patrick Jones, and Jonathan Grenard. And then the second team is working a lot of other guys. But Gabriel Murphy so far is the guy who has the most discussion around him. And I think with how they went about getting Andre Carter. If that was working, we might have heard something about it so far, or we might have noticed something, but I can't see everything all at once. Maybe I'm missing something. Man Juice, are all of week 1 starters on the roster, or do you think Kwesi is cooking up something else? I think so. It depends on health, because then you might look for a defensive tackle. I don't know who's out there in free agency at this point. You might look for a trade for a defensive tackle, possibly. But I think the roster is the roster. I don't know that they're going to go out and make any trades. They always pick up somebody almost every year. Every team that I've covered, somebody gets cut from another team and they pick them up. But from there, I don't know who. I just would be surprised. We'd all be surprised if they made some sort of serious trade. I think Fabian Morrow that's your offseason signing. And to tell you the truth, had they signed Fabian Morrow in May or April, we might look at it as like, oh, okay, like a pretty good veteran corner who's been okay in the league. He's going to contribute. But when it's under the circumstances of losing Mekhi Blackman, well, then it feels much worse. And it feels like, oh, great, now they're desperate. But that might be the biggest thing they end up doing. But you never can count Kwesi out. He's made some big moves so far. Evan, could we see JJ get in the game in the fourth quarter if they're down by 30 and Darnold has had a terrible game? Or do you get the feeling that when JJ plays, he will be starting? Impossible to say. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. I guess there still remains a question of whether he is going to be the backup on game day. I think that he, at this point, has shown that he is capable of being the backup on game day, that there's no real reason to have Nick Mullins as number 2. And if they got down 30 points, then, I mean, when we were in minicamp, okay, it looked like, yeah, he's going to have to go a really far way. But this is what you expect from someone this young, is to make big progress to the point of the middle of training camp, which we are approaching here, kind of the dog days of training camp. Assuming that he's QB2, I don't see any downside to doing that, to pulling Darnold. I don't see any downside to doing it if they're down a couple touchdowns and Darnold has had a really bad game. I mean, they could be down 14 points. Go for it. If he's ready, it all depends on his readiness, but if he's ready, then do it. Let's see. Not a Vikings related, but it bugs me that you have Seattle Seahawks on your AFC flag side. Oh, sir, is this an age problem? This might be an age problem. The Seattle Seahawks used to be in the AFC, and these are from many a year ago. So yeah, they belong there. Seattle belongs on the AFC side. It used to be the case. It also used to be the case that the Vikings were in the same division as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But yep, the old AFC, my man. Back in the Joey Galloway days, that was an AFC club. Steve Largent going back even farther. Zed 31, been away for a bit, but I see Myles Gaskin is back on the team. He is. I'm not sure that I totally get it. I just, like, Myles Gaskin has had some success before, and they must like him as a special teamer, and they must like him as a teammate, but maybe someone with a little more upside possibly than him. He's only played a little in the NFL. It went okay one year and not okay another year. They must just trust him. Sometimes when there's somebody on the team that you don't really get it, it's like we just trust him that if they had to play him, he would be able to do it. But yeah, he's back on the team. No, and I respect the journeyman guy who stays in the league and earns the trust of coaching staffs. It's hard to do, and plays special teams and is willing to fight to stay in the league. But if you were looking for, hey, you got Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, let's take some more swings at upside guys who could be players for the future, they haven't really done that. And I haven't seen a thing from Dwayne McBride that makes me think that he's going to be on this team. We've seen maybe too much Kene Nwangwu, who I just don't believe is a running back. That room is pretty weak after the top two guys. Nate says, I saw a video on Twitter of JJ change the play at the line of scrimmage. Felt like that's impressive for someone who is as young as he is and it's just practice. So in the NFL, normally there are multiple plays all the time. And you can, if you see a guy go kill, 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 that means going to the other play. They can adjust to a run play. This is why playing quarterback is so hard. I mean, they used to call it audible, and we don't hear that so much anymore about audibling, but that used to be a big thing. Can he audible at the line of scrimmage? Now it's just every play. It's kind of in the way that I play video games, which is to go up to the line of scrimmage and change the receiver's routes versus the coverage, and then you're open every time. But that's kind of how it works, is you have different choices at the line of scrimmage. So if you can't do that, then you can't play. But what you're saying, I have seen a comfort playing quarterback with NFL players around him against NFL defenders, whether it's changing the play, whether it's getting people lined up, it's running a 2-minute operation, it's throwing an out route, throwing a deep pass, scrambling and making a play. He just looks like a guy who belongs as an NFL quarterback in an NFL practice and has a decent idea of what he's doing out there, to the point where if he were to play, I wouldn't go, this is going to be really terrible. And that's the first major step to us figuring out how good JJ McCarthy is going to be. So immediately I've moved away from massive, enormous bust who could never play. We're already beyond that. And then we go from here, because if he was terrible, then in practice, he wouldn't look like he did today. He wouldn't look like what you saw, which was in charge, in control, and going from there. That's about as far as I can go with that. Sorry, you guys are funny. Wallpaper source 0 out of 10. Yeah, I don't know who came up with Adam because he threw with Adam Thielen. Was that why JJ McCarthy did? Did you guys know Adam Thielen's from Minnesota? That's why he did that. Detroit freaking Lakes. Have we not been over this? That doesn't mean you're getting him back. I guess if they make that trade, then I'm going to have to go back and delete all this stuff. But I don't think that that's going to happen. There just doesn't, when you have Naylor playing well and you've got a number of other young receivers or inexperienced, like even Lucky Jackson, who stood out to me, I think you just let those guys play and don't go looking for an older wide receiver. And also, if you're Carolina, you don't give away a veteran receiver that can help you. If Bryce Young is decent, above average, and takes that huge Jared Goff jump with Dave Canales, then they're going to compete. They want to win. They want to get a winning record. They don't want their owner throwing drinks on people and knocking people's hats off. They want to win. They're not giving away Adam Thielen yet. Flick says, I keep getting more and more excited for this season. A lot of young guys are going to get a chance to shine. The future is as exciting as a Vikings fan. Yeah, Flick, here's the thing. When you talk about that, throughout this entire offseason, I would think to myself, am I like supporting this too much? It was kind of my plan for them, was to draft quarterback and move on from Kirk Cousins, spend in free agency. It's what they did. Dallas Turner was a player that I was very high on in college, and that worked out pretty well. It seems pretty good. Like they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then when you go out to training camp and you see Jefferson playing well, catching a lot of passes from Darnold. Darnold was on my list toward the top of players that I thought could be a good bridge quarterback. I thought he might have been my number one in comparison to like Jacoby Brissett, where there's no real upside and you're going to bench him 5 weeks into the season. This is different. This is a little intrigue here, but also somebody who did a good job as a backup quarterback last year. Okay. And so all of it has made so much sense to me with their approach to the offseason and their long-term build with JJ McCarthy. The only question I guess I had was, are you picking a guy who was a little too inexperienced as opposed to some of the other quarterbacks in the draft? But they get McCarthy in, he starts throwing the ball around. You go, I get it. I see it. I also have no idea who's going to work out and who's not going to. So I can't, again, plant a flag when it comes to that. And then you see some players like Dallas Turner and the way that McCarthy's playing. I think that my whole point is the fans of the Minnesota Vikings over the last several seasons have gotten tired of the Kirk Cousins Can he make it? Maybe they can get a guard and get him over the top. Oh, they signed a nose tackle. It'll be different this year. And you got a little taste of it in the first half of 2022, and then it just turned back to what it always was. If you take out that beginning of 2022 where they had everything go right at the end of games, it's a 500, a little above 500 type of whole time for Kirk Cousins there. And I just felt a malaise from the fan base inside the stadium in these live chats. We have 3 times as many people here tonight as we did last year at this time. There is a new excitement that's come along with uncertainty and what could be in the future. And I'm with you. I mean, I'm feeling that from you guys and from the organization in general as I'm out there every day and feeling the energy of new players and younger players that they're going to build with over a long period of time. If they work out, you just get a sense for it. And so I agree with you. GDP says, are you as tired of hearing the same questions of JJ as the rest of us? We won't know how he's doing for a few months. No, I'm not. You know what I won't get tired of? Talking about the first round draft pick quarterback. Man, I will not get tired of that. I'm going to come back here every dang day from training camp, every practice, and I'm going to tell you how he did. And we're going to talk about a lot of the things with JJ McCarthy, some even multiple times. You know why? Because it's interesting. That's why. Because having a first round quarterback who has won everywhere he's gone, who is a really excellent athlete, and who every day, even in setback days, does a little something new and makes a little more progress toward this ultimate goal of finding your franchise quarterback that this team has not had since Fran Tarkenton. You know what, man? I'm not tired of that. You know what I was tired of? Hey, if Kirk gets a left guard, then maybe he'll win one more game this year. That I was tired of. I was tired of going into a season where last year you're just like, I mean, it's interesting, but what's the expectations? And here it is, right? I mean, it just, every year we went into it saying, how is this going to be not in the middle? How is this going to be anything different than average? That I was tired of. This, it's going to take a lot more conversations about the quarterback for me to get tired of that. Thank you for the question. Definitely not tired. Let's see. Caleb says, do you remember how Josh Allen looked in his first training camp? I do not. I was here. In 2018, I was here covering the Vikings. That was my 3rd season. 2016 was my first. 2017 was my first training camp and full season. And then 2018 is when Allen came into the league. One thing I remember, though, is the first game of the season. No, 3rd game of the season was Bills and Vikings at US Bank Stadium. And I'm sure a lot of you remember it for being very sad because it was a terrible blowout. But someone with the Bills who I knew, I was chatting with about Josh Allen. I said, man, how's that going? Like, he didn't beat out Nathan Peterman for the job. And this person with the Bills said to me, he's got it. Like, we already know he's got it. He's got the work ethic to rebuild the throwing motion. He's already leading the team. Like, don't worry, he's got it. I was like, oh, okay, I guess so. That was before the game. And then he jumped over Anthony Barr. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess he does got it. And then it was a journey from there to get to the point of now where he's a top quarterback and a superstar. But yeah, usually you can see it pretty quickly. And also, I think from the other side, EJ Manuel, when I was there, it was brutal. It was brutal. And I have a baseline for young quarterbacks who aren't good because I've seen EJ Manuel, I've seen Kellen Mond and other quarterbacks who have come in that just had no chance. And Jaren Hall, honestly, like, there was, a couple moments there early in camp when they were in shorts, but the minute the pads came on, okay, well, the arm is just not going to be enough. He's just probably not big enough. He seems like a super hard worker, but he's probably a backup. You could tell those things pretty quickly. And I think that the early returns on McCarthy have been very solid. Is he Mahomes? No, but it's coming along on a daily basis. And to go back to my original point at the beginning of the show, I thought it was a big deal that today he came back from a tough practice and played well. I thought it said something about his resilience, because that can start to snowball where you got a tough practice, you start to lose some confidence, and then it goes from there. But instead, it was a really good practice today. Sean says, I read somewhere that Murphy arm length was down on the percentile, relying too much on analytics over eye test. Well, arm length is not, I wouldn't consider the arm length percentile to be too analytical. There are studies, of course, that have shown that certain attributes tend to lean towards success a little bit more. And I'm sure that arm length is one of those where guys with certain arm lengths under X, Y, or Z have not worked out. And the same thing probably goes for linebackers, where certain height linebackers below whatever outside of Sam Mills and London Fletcher have not worked out. But when you're talking about undrafted free agents or late round draft picks, shouldn't you just go on the production and right? I mean, shouldn't you throw out something like that for somebody who, late in the draft could potentially turn into something for you? Brett says, it always makes me laugh seeing fans want people back, saying Peterson's still out there. Both Petersons, Patrick and Adrian, the other night. And do you think we could get Thielen back? Sure, let's get Moss and Carter out there too. I know. I know why people want Adam Thielen back. He's very popular. And probably could help them as wide receiver 3. It's just that's not really a good idea for either team at this moment. Dan says, here's a question no one cares about. How's Jaren Hall looked? Improved, not a lot of reps. It's the last part. I got a couple today. I watched other people. It's nothing against Jaren Hall. I really mean this. He's been extremely professional. Since the minute he showed up, he has been very professional. It's just, it is what it is. It is what it is. He's QB4. He probably won't be anything different than that. That's life. The guy who was the IMG 5-star national champion first round pick goes to the front of the line, unfortunately for Jaren Hall. But here's what I think. If Jaren Hall handles this well, that he can have a career in the NFL, and he can potentially be their backup if they move on from Nick Mullins maybe in a year when his contract is up after this year, then he will still be on his rookie deal, and he could still play for this team and be McCarthy's backup, and that could be pretty good for him. So he should take Nick Mullins' cues and do everything he can out there at training camp to help the other guys and be the best teammate he can be and take advantage of his handful of reps. I did see him make a nice throw. Was it today or yesterday? But that's all he can really do. Caleb says, I read that McCarthy had first team reps during 7-on-7, completing to Jefferson and Munt and Addison twice. True. Maybe. Yesterday he had one rep of 11-on-11s. He may have thrown, I'm not sure I remember that on 7-on-7s, but sometimes when they're doing 7-on-7, sometimes when they're doing 1-on-1s, they rotate through. Maybe that was it when they were throwing to different receivers, not 7-on-7, but wide receiver drills, wide receiver versus corner. It might have been that. And they've got on the other side offensive and defensive line, which I was watching a little bit more. But even then 7-on-7s is just kind of a drill. Whereas 11-on-11, when we talk about reps and who's playing with who, it's always 11-on-11 is what we're talking about. As they rotate through wide receivers, he may have thrown to some. I don't remember the 7-on-7 part exactly, but I look at it when I'm counting reps, who's playing with who, it's always when they're doing full team drill. David says, any signs up or down on Manoa or Tyamani? Big is the only thing I could say. They are large men. Tyamani is particularly huge. Those guys are going to have to do it in the preseason because they are not getting a ton of reps. Just reality. You're not getting a ton of reps on this team right now. Not that I've seen. I'll have to look a little closer for those guys in the middle, but probably preseason, they've got to stand out to earn some more reps. Leon, are they going to look for another running back now that Akers didn't sign? I still don't know what kind of happened there. kind of curious. I think they should. I wonder if they said, with Kene Nwangwu, like, we're going to give you a chance to be RB3 and see how it goes. You can always get another running back somewhere, but they should look for another running back, because if they don't get to have Aaron Jones healthy the whole year, then you're asking Ty Chandler to do absolutely everything. I mean, they need someone else who they can rely on, and I don't feel like it's Nwangwu, and I don't feel like it's Gaskin. James says the Vikings were a 7-win team without Kirk, mostly without JJ last year. Feels like people make their cap 8 wins, but Darnold should be better. McCarthy might be, and the defense is better. And they might not fumble at a historic rate either. It's hard to convince me that this team can be awful because of coaching, because of the amount of talent that they have. One thing that is working against them, though, James, is that last year's schedule is not this year's schedule, and you just don't know. I mean, last year they played against the Raiders with Aiden O'Connell making one of his first starts, and the Raiders wouldn't even throw the ball past about 5 yards. And they shut them out, and they get a win. Like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, that can happen again, but that's pretty rare, I think, for your team to get a shutout because the other quarterback plays so badly. The beginning of this season is a lot of good teams with a lot of great quarterbacks, and it might be a harder track. Darnold can be better than Josh Dobbs or better than Nick Mullins. I don't have any doubt about that. Also, if he's just okay, though, or even less than okay, and then you're going to get off to a pretty tough start, and then you're playing uphill for the entire season. It might be difficult to get to the same number of wins. I see what you're saying, and they're coached well enough to where the defense will keep them in games, but I'm not willing to kind of run past that 9-win, 10-win at the maximum thing until we see Sam Darnold or JJ McCarthy really play and win games against good quarterbacks. Because when you're going against the 49ers offense, CJ Stroud, even Jordan Love, much more proven than anyone the Vikings have, that could be tough. That could be tough right out of the gate. And then the Lions and the Jets. And if Rodgers is healthy, it's a very, very tough start to the schedule. If they were to get to 3-3 through the first 6 games, I would believe that they could be a playoff team. James says, how do you think a healthy Naylor compares to KJ Osborne? Very different skill sets. I look at Naylor as a deep threat guy. He's extremely fast. His 40 is just not his football speed. He's very fast, and he can leap way up in the air. KJ Osborne was sort of a pickup truck. He was low to the ground, and I guess a pickup truck isn't necessarily low to the ground. It can be, though, a low rider, but you know what I mean. He was not like a big leaper, not super blazing fast, but when got up to speed, he was powerful. Very intelligent player, but not the most precise route runner, I didn't feel like. And getting the ball in his hands was really good, but trying to push it down the field to him and things like that, it just wasn't exactly like running double moves. It wasn't really it wasn't really his thing. Aya says, question, Matthew, wine, beer, or mixed drink? These are my 2 main things right here. I'm not a drinker at all. I only drink Diet Coke and Diet Dr. Pepper. It's a fun fact because look at that, 9 o'clock, right on the mark, 9 o'clock. There's always a weird question. I've never had a drink. Fun little fact. Every night, 9 o'clock, you guys get to find out something fun about me. I've never had a drink. Don't have a great explanation for it, but it's true. Let's see. I shot you 99. Why don't more journalists do what you do, live streams and interacting with the fans? Well, one thing is that I was a talk radio host from, what year would it have been? 2010, when I first got hired in Buffalo, until 2020. So 10 years as a professional talk radio host. And then now on year number 4, I guess season number 5 of doing this show, I'm pretty comfortable talking for 2 hours in a row without losing my mind or struggling. I don't, if you do it for 10 years, you're pretty okay with it. I don't think there are many beat reporters in the country who have 10 years of talk radio experience. It just happens to be my thing. So that's probably why. I think that a lot of writers would like to do it. And some writers don't like interacting with fans because they think you guys are crazy. But one thing that I find is that some of you are, but not usually. There's a lot more rational fans than crazy, which makes the crazy stand out. That over the years, that now that I've had this many interactions with you guys, most fans have at least a baseline level of rationality about their team. And it's only the crazy people who are, well, one is looking for attention on the internet. People just do that a lot. And people who are desperate for attention and want to come out and be ridiculous and snarky and tell you the media is hating on it or whatever. You should just ignore those people, because 99%, or at least maybe 90, are very knowledgeable and rational about the team. That makes me really enjoy this. Is that how often, every once in a while, I put up a silly comment. We've been talking for 2 hours, not one. There hasn't been a single comment that I thought was totally ridiculous. Maybe one. Oh, the one that said I shouldn't talk about McCarthy. But other than that, like, that's it. A lot more rational people. But I think that there's a perception because of social media from a lot of journalists that if you do something like this, you're just going to have complete insanity from the comment section. And that's not really the case. Leon says, is Linval still out there? All right, we're bringing back Pat Williams. We're bringing Shamar Stephan, anybody. Linval did play last year, though, so you're not being totally wacky with that one. I don't know how much is left in that tank. It's probably not much. If Jerry Tillery is out, Levi Drake Rodriguez, you're next man up, because if there's somebody who's a free agent who can rush the passer at the defensive tackle position, they have a job. Cup of Joe Mama, that's tremendous. That is a tremendous name. Says, we're not stuck in the middle anymore, and that's what's so refreshing. We could be really bad or really good. You're right that not knowing the end of the movie is why you go to see it. And that's what J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold have brought to this season, is so much intrigue. It's going to be a fascinating roller coaster to follow how this progresses over this season. And there's so many different outcomes. And that's why, when the guy did say, well, is somebody already tired of talking about McCarthy yet? No, because there's so many different scenarios that could play out here, and so many different moving parts and factors and elements, and watching him progress is actually, I mean, if he turns out to be really good, and then you go back to the season and say, remember when in camp we were doing those live streams and we're saying, I think we kind of see it or whatever, right? I mean, that's the fun part of where they are right now. And I think that it has reinvigorated the fan base. The crowds out there, despite the weather, have been pretty dialed into the team. And I just think that there has been more energy to this thing over this offseason, because it's what everybody wanted. Everyone wanted a new direction, a new life to this team. Paul says, do we think Tillery is done? Oh, I don't know. We haven't heard anything about it. If you guys see anything on Twitter with Tillery, let me know. I so far have not. I guess I thought that it might be a good sign that there hasn't been a report of a season-ending injury, because maybe his agent would tell Ian Rappaport or something. But it just looked pretty tough. He was down for a long time. When the head coach comes over to a guy who's injured and has a long discussion with him, that makes you concerned. He did stand up and walk and get on the cart, but that also happened with Mekhi Blackman as well. It's concerning. I don't have any report on that, though. Brett says, percentage chance Levi Drake starts on September 8th. I think pretty high. Now, if Jerry Tillery is out, and look, he could be back by the next practice. We just don't know yet. It just looked bad. But with Levi Drake Rodriguez, I mean, starting might mean whatever. I mean, it might mean something like, he's playing 12 snaps, but it just happened to be the first snap. I think that it's possible that Levi Drake Rodriguez has a decent role to start the season based on what I've seen so far. We need to see a lot more, But the fact that he's working into those reps, that matters. Let's see. Sean says it's early in camp, but your worries before camp on holes and roster areas, are the fears still the same, less concerned, or more worried? Well, the number one was the cornerback position, and it got worse on the first day of camp. So that one has gotten worse. And I did an article on this yesterday where I looked at the range of outcomes from the three corners that you would expect to play a lot, which is Byron Murphy, Fabian Morrow now, and Shaq Griffin, and what they've done, their best and worst performances in their career. The range of outcomes isn't particularly great. Like, the high end is not awesome and the low end is really bad for all three players. That's concerning. And last year, the corners did not perform very well. They gave up almost 100 quarterback rating and 8 yards per attempt into their coverage. Are you going to be better than that? I think that's what you're hoping for. If you're Brian Flores, is that having three veterans can produce competent play, whereas Caleb Evans playing last year at the end of the season kind of melted down there, and they were playing a rookie in Mekhi Blackman, who was pretty good, but was still a rookie. It's still a major concern. It's a even bigger concern than I thought it was, and it was already a major concern. Defensive tackle, if Tillery's hurt, again, major concern. Left guard is to be determined. I can't definitively say much about the left guard yet. I'd be overreaching and doing that. The major concern, I mean, the biggest worry that everyone would have had was that J.J. McCarthy would look horrible. And that worry has been, what's the right word? Quelled. It has been alleviated. He doesn't look bad. In fact, he's looked pretty darn good. And I had a really good practice today. So that one right there is out the window. The other thing would be, how does Jalen Naylor look? Are they going to have a wide receiver 3? So far, the offense has done pretty well in these practices. The backup tight ends have done their job. That would be another concern for you. Dallas Turner, what's a rookie going to look like? I think it's been pretty good so far. So, it's a little bit across the board, but the big worries have still been the big worries outside of the biggest worry. Aya says PFF can't measure mental capacity and decision-making speed. Great tool for physical stuff, but it is not the end-all, be-all. Well, I wrote an entire book on it, so I think that I know a thing or two about PFF. So I'm aware of that it is not the be-all, end-all. However, what I would say is, when you say it can't measure mental capacity, but it measures performance, mental capacity is such an enormous part of performance. So I think it stands to reason that somebody who puts up really good PFF grades will also many times have the mental capacity to play in the NFL. So while it doesn't have a marker that says mental capacity, we can pretty well discern that if a Fred Warner linebacker ends up with the best PFF grade in the league, probably has pretty good mental capacity, or at least the baseline, and then there's something else that's helping them. So no, but there's never, oh my gosh. Thunder and lightning just scared the bleep out of me right now. I'm sorry. Whoa. I was like, what just hit my house? I'm sorry. Oh, wow. Okay. Lightning can't come through a live stream, right? That scared the heck out of me. I'm sorry. I was in the middle of a rant. But no, there's not a single person alive who has ever thought that PFF's grades are be all end all. However, when you look at somebody like Gabriel Murphy or someone like Ivan Pace, if all I told you was this, there's an undrafted free agent who has 90 grades and has the physical baseline as far as a 40, how high he could jump, his weightlifting or whatever, to be in the NFL. Do you want him to be like, yeah? You mean he played really good? Like, yeah. And look, if Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and this is not what's happening, but if Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is like, hey guys, there's a UDFA that had crazy grades from PFF. Should we just get him? Of course you should get them. They cost hardly anything. Some of these UDFAs, I mean, you're paying what it costs to get like a couple of secretaries. So I'm sure that the grading, I mean, I know this for having written the book. It's a factor. They look at it. They a lot of teams pay a lot of attention to it. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah in the way that he made his bones in San Francisco that helped lead him here was by using PFF's college grades to study them using data science and present them to the 49ers front office. It's in the book. Football is a numbers game. I interviewed Kwesi about it. So it is a very useful tool. Anyway, what about Bob says with all the attrition, who is getting the top slot corner reps? That would be Byron Murphy. Yep. So they'll put in the two outside corners, Morrow or Evans, and it'll be Griffin when he comes back. And then Murphy will move into the slot is kind of how it works out. Aya says Ward might be good in the slot. He's played more outside so far. Jay Ward has played the outside role. Jim says, how does Ed Ingram look this year? It looks just like Ed Ingram looked last year. But here's the thing for Ed Ingram. It doesn't look any different to me, but how am I supposed to tell if he's going to give up 40 or 30 pressures? If he can reduce how many pressures he gives up from 40 to 30 by mastering a handful of details and be a little more consistent when it comes to the run blocking, he can be good. He can be and I don't mean great, but I mean a good draft pick and successful and helpful to the team. Whether he's doing that or not in this training camp would be insane if I could figure that out from the sideline. It would be amazing. But I wish I could. David says, Purple's future is so bright that you have to wear the Oakley shades. Oh, the Oakley shades? Yeah, I get, maybe when I talk about the future, I should bring these up. I thought this was just for Justin Jefferson contract negotiations. Let's see. Cup of Joe Mama. Out of the blue question, but if the Vikings were to go to the Super Bowl, who would you see us going against? I mean, you could just ask who from the AFC might go to the Super Bowl. That's another question. I mean, the Texans would be a popular pick here. The Chiefs. I mean, who else do you want to go with? Once you say the Chiefs, it's kind of over there. The Bills, as long as they have Josh Allen. Let me look. Hey, you know what's an interesting pick for this? Would be Miami. Miami is an interesting pick for this. I could also see Cincinnati, Baltimore. Those are probably the favorites. But Miami has the weaknesses of Tua in the same way that the Vikings had the weaknesses of Kirk, where there's a lot of strengths to the guy, but there's kind of a fatal flaw that he's not really a great playmaker and he's not all that big, and he always has to throw with anticipation, which sometimes results in bad interceptions. But that offense is amazing. And last year they got a bunch of guys hurt on defense that if they're a little healthier, they could be pretty dangerous. All right. Scrolling here. Let's see. Speedy says, is there a chance for a late preseason trade a la Eagles? And the Vikings type trade when we got Sam Bradford and the Eagles went with Wentz. Would you have confidence in JJ if we traded Darnold away? If they traded Darnold away and started JJ McCarthy, that would be an incredibly good sign for JJ McCarthy, meaning that not only were they so confident that he could start, but also so confident they didn't need anybody else even here. That could happen. I mean, the Bills did this when Tyrod Taylor won the job. They traded away Matt Castle. Where did he go? It wasn't here. It was somewhere. It was Dallas, I think they traded him to. It's not insane. It's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. But if they keep playing only Sam Darnold, here's the thing about this year. They want to win. And I talked about this with Kevin Seifert the other day. They want to win. They want to be in the playoffs. They don't look at this year as kind of a throwaway with whatever. And they would have to believe that J.J. McCarthy could play 17 games and get him to the playoffs in order to do that. Not impossible, but the time is ticking in order to get there. It would have to be within the next week that they decide, okay, you know what? And someone would have to get hurt also. You know what? Hey, we don't even need Sam Darnold, who looked great today, by the way. We didn't even need Sam Darnold. We're going forward with McCarthy. Ton of progress would need to be made in order for that to happen. Apparently this is going to be some nasty weather. Why didn't you guys tell me? Severe thunderstorm. You guys, you have a couple jobs as the watchers. You got to keep an eye on the weather. You got to tell me where you get your rumors. And what's the other? You got to tell me when somebody's hurt if you see a report on the internet. That's those are the things that you got to do. If I'm talking, I can't look at Twitter, so you got to tell me what you're seeing on Twitter. Sean says Ed Ingram, based on what is LY? I don't know what LY is. Has fast reflexes, sometimes too fast when he's not patient. His patient with his hands, don't want to make the first move against edges. Yeah, I mean, the thing is with Ed Ingram, I mean, we know already what he is. It just comes down to a handful more reps that he doesn't blow. And how do you know that that's going to happen or not, right? That's the difficult thing, is trying to figure out, if you're the team, if he plays like he did last year, you can survive. If he plays a little better than he did last year, you're pretty good. And that small gap, like I'm sure those technical issues you're talking about with the hands and this is that, like, yeah, I mean, there's always a technical thing, but when you get into the game, there's those 5 reps a game where you don't do what you're supposed to do that separates the great from the okay from the bad. And how do we know from watching in training camp if he has reduced those things? Now, if I watched every single rep and not the quarterbacks, maybe I could come up with something a little better, but I haven't. I think the quarterback, here's what I could say. I think the quarterbacks have had time to throw the quarterback, Sam Darnold, behind the first team offense. That's what I think. So far, there has been time to throw. The tackles are great. The interior does not look like it's just falling on top of Sam Darnold, which we have seen before. And that might be a decent sign for them. But it's really those joint practices. I'm going to watch the O-line close. Kumar says, if Tillery is injured, is Andre Carter in the running to play a role and make the roster? I don't know that he's the next man. I have not noticed him enough to say, hey, this guy's on the rise. He's going to have to prove that, and maybe he will. Hunter says, just joining, so you probably covered it. Yep, sorry, Hunter, I covered it. I don't know what you're going to ask, but I covered it. It's been 2 hours. I probably did. Where have you been? Let's see. That was a cool touchdown to Aaron Jones in the back of the end zone. Yeah. It's a little odd for me is when some of you have seen Twitter highlights that fans took from the stands and tweeted out, and some of you haven't. So I'm trying to describe plays. Here's how it went. Sam Darnold and JJ McCarthy today did a really good job with their mobility and making plays scrambling that we just haven't seen from Kirk Cousins. And it's hard not to compare. When you see Darnold roll to his left, flip his hips, flip the ball up on the run to Aaron Jones, he goes up and grabs it for a touchdown. That's an athletic play. McCarthy had one where he's rolling to his right, where he let it zip, and there's a ton of velocity behind the ball. Whoa, that's an athletic play. That's one of the reasons you moved on, was to get a better athlete at the position, because you have to make plays like that to succeed. And Darnold can do it, and McCarthy, I think, excels at it. Matt says, which NFL team do you think will do the worst against projections? Example, the Chiefs only win 6 games. So I don't know. Later this month, I'm going to Vegas for 2 days to do a show with Circa, and that is probably one of the times that, we'll talk about all the over-unders and do that whole thing. Let me take a look. But so I don't know all the over-unders by heart. I just kind of know basic expectations. Of course, you could see the Jets just being horrible. You know who looks like they're going to be not good is the Chargers, because that plantar issue in my right foot, I have an ever so slight plantar issue that bothers me a little bit from time to time. And it doesn't go away, and it's really annoying. And sometimes I get up walking around like, oh, man, this is really killing me today. Now, I'm sure that the medical attention to Justin Herbert's going to be better than it is to me, or at least he's going to get any medical attention for his plantar issue. But it's not an easy thing to deal with. It's not something that just, oh, yeah, it heals up. It's a little broken finger. It heals up. You're good to go. It's pointed sideways, but you're fine. It lingers. It's a difficult injury. So you could see the Chargers having a very tough time. I know Jim Harbaugh, but it's his first season coming back. That might be one that I look at as being below expectations. Cleveland for sure. I mean, Cleveland's team is very, very talented, but they made the playoffs last year with Joe Flacco. So now they're thinking, well, we've got Deshaun Watson. He's going to be back to his old self eventually. And hey, if we can win with Flacco, then we can win with, doesn't always work that way. And I'm not sure that they're actually going to be good. I should look at an NFC team. Who in the NFC would be that team? Philly, maybe? Losing Jason Kelce, huge deal for them. Center, I think, is a really important intellectual position. Maybe San Francisco, but they should still be really good. Atlanta. Why not say Atlanta? Just say Atlanta. You know you wanted to say Atlanta. Atlanta, I believe their over-under is maybe 9.5. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes the under. How about that? I mean, Kirk's coming back from a catastrophic injury, and everyone talks about how, well, this player is supposed to be a lot better than he is, and that player is supposed to be a lot better than he is, and oh yeah, their defense is terrible, but don't talk about that. It's like, well, maybe they're actually not that good. First name, last name, I think, let's see, a Darnold trade would have more to do with what the trade compensation is than anything else. See, I don't think so. I think it's entirely about their comfort. Yeah, if someone comes to you with a first-round draft pick, that would be pretty hard to deny, as the Vikings once did with Sam Bradford, when they offered that trade to the Eagles. So maybe you're right about that. If some team said, we'll give you a first, that would be insane, though. So that's not going to happen. But if it's even a third, which is more realistic, then you're probably only doing it if you feel really good about McCarthy. And the reason the Eagles did it, yeah, it was smart from the perspective of a draft pick, but they did it because Wentz looked really good. And they thought that he was going to be a franchise quarterback, and he certainly looked like that for some time. David says, Vikes and Bills, loser leaves town, Super Bowl matchup. Darnold goes down with an injury. And here comes J.J. McCarthy. Well, that sort of happened with Jeff Hostetler and Phil Simms. In what year was that? When they beat that was in 1990. That Jeff Hostetler had to come in for Phil Simms and then played. Hostetler went on to the Raiders. Yes. I was telling a Viking player today that I was interviewing for a story about Ray Buchanan. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. It's just all knowledge, not being old. It's just all knowledge. Cade says Rams over. I'm with you. I think the Rams will be great this year. I think they will be really good. That has been one of my takes as well. Let's see. Bob says, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, especially your money. I have a great time in Vegas because the not drinking thing always helps. And, I like going to the places and seeing things. There's a lot of sites there. I mentioned to someone the museums I had been to in Vegas, and they were like, seriously, you go to Vegas and see the museums? But yes. I'm a very chill Vegas visitor, put it that way. I always have a good time. I may have told this story when I was in Vegas, but I was doing Radio Row at the Super Bowl, promoting my book, Football is a Numbers Game. And I got in an elevator really early in the morning because I had to go over to Radio Row to go on shows that start at 6 o'clock in the morning. So it's 5:30 or something. And I get on with a guy, and he's looking pretty rough. And he says, how'd you do tonight? And of course, I've been in bed. I'm just waking up to go over there. And I said, I'm good. And he said, it broke me. And then he just walked off out of the elevator. And I was like, man, that's tough. I'm in better shape than that guy. Be responsible. I'm sure that's what Vegas wants on the big sign outside of Las Vegas. Las Vegas, be responsible. Follow Purple Insider's advice. Don't go crazy. Not here. I don't think that's what their thing is. But it's Circa. It's cool. That's our sponsor. Mike says, I have few expectations for 2024, except for we should see a more complete version of what the vision of the offense will look like. This seems like a season of glimpses, not hope. Season of glimpses would be a great NFL films from back in the day when they did the yearbooks. Season of glimpses. Minnesota Vikings fans saw J.J. McCarthy start to come into his own. I agree with you that sort of, like yes and no. I go back and forth on this because this is not a team with just a bunch of young guys who is sort of here for the vibes to try to develop over a season. Harrison Smith, Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman, these guys are veteran players. Andrew Van Ginkel, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson when he comes back, Darisaw O'Neal. These are not young players, and these are stars. Really good players. You should win games. You have one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. This former NFL quarterback who worked for McVay is supposed to be a great coach offensively. You should win. If you lose a bunch of games, it's not good for you. It's not just vibes and glimpses. You should win. Sam Darnold should play better than he's ever played if he's in there. J.J. McCarthy should look like an NFL quarterback if he's in there, because that's the expectation that you set. But that doesn't mean I expect them to win 14. It's just I also think that if they're awful, I'm not going to go, it's fine. I can't imagine myself on the post games saying, it's fine. They have expectations of how they're going to perform. But I think we can all also live in a position where we understand 2025 is more realistic for them actually winning. Todd says, how is Jaquelin Roy doing? Have not seen a ton of impact from Jaquelin Roy. It's going to have to show up if it's going to be there. Only a little bit from him last year. It's not somebody that I have on my short list of players who have popped the most. And that's going to have to happen at some point in order for him to be a difference maker. He may make the roster. I guess we'll see on that. But I have him very fringe right now on the roster. All right. I'm running out of voice. I wanted to do a long one tonight, though, because no show tomorrow, with the fact that the Vikings are just having a walkthrough. There's no media tomorrow. Monday night will be a night practice. To answer Sean, your question, are you going to be in Cleveland? Absolutely. Yes, I will be there. Booked my flight, booked the hotel. We're good to go. I'm excited about Cleveland. We'll be doing a show from there. I'm thinking about getting a mobile internet thing to make sure that I can do the live stuff. But either way, a lot of fun tonight, though. Look forward to that. Look forward to the night practice. And what I was going to say for all of you is that I will be there at the night practice. As soon as it ends, I will come right back here and do a live show and recap it for you in depth, in stupid amounts of depth for the night practice on Monday night. So look forward to that. It'll be a late live show, and I am excited about that. So I am going to make sure that none of my trees or house got hit by lightning, and we'll talk very soon, and there will be a lot to discuss. Check out purpleinsider.com. The articles I have over there and that I've tweeted out, make sure you give them a read. Consider signing up for the newsletter. Make sure you go check that stuff out. I've got some fun features coming out on the written side as well. So thank you all so much for a really fun show tonight, and I will talk to you all very soon. Football